As the 49ers prepare to travel to Seattle to face their division rival Seahawks, we got more clarity on Christian McCaffrey and his calf. We'll discuss the 49ers' favorable and not so favorable matchups for their season opener on today's Faithful Forecast preview show.
You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I'm your host, Steph. It is Friday, September 5th. We are back with the first preview show of the 2025 season. And as always, for the last couple of years, I am very pleased to be joined once again by the great Kyle Posey of Niners Nation. KP, how you doing?
What's up? Long time no talk. I'm good. We got football, man. It's all season. It's really been like we're reading the same stories, just presented differently, like the last 3 months. And then all of August is just guessing games on how does this player look? How does this player look? And now we don't have to worry about any of that. So I'm so happy that we actually have actual tangible football.
We will. I mean, at least for this first week one preview show, week ones are always weird to preview because you still don't really have anything tangible to really look at yet besides maybe preseason and, some off-season changes for each of these teams. But KP, I think we got to go straight into the meat of this show, which needs to be Christian McCaffrey and this calf injury that, showed up on the injury report yesterday as limited. That everyone was in a tizzy over that, as you can imagine, after the season that Christian McCaffrey had last year. We're all freaking out. Well, Kyle Shanahan spoke with the media after practice today, said he did not practice. So we freaked out even more. Well, Christian McCaffrey also spoke with the media and had this to say. Let me just play this video here.
What happened yesterday?
Nothing serious, I can tell you that. I feel great about where I'm at. Just unfortunately, when you have an injury history that I have, sometimes when you don't practice, things get blown out of proportion. But like I said, I feel great.
Does it feel different than it felt last summer?
Yeah, I've forgotten about last year. Forgot about the year before that. I'm focused on this week and playing Seattle on Sunday.
Christian, just kind of thing in practice where you felt something and you just want to be real cautious with it? Is that kind of
Yeah, I'm not supposed to go into anything that happened, but as I felt like it was a smart thing to do to not finish the practice because I've been there before and I've been my own worst enemy in situations like that. And I'm just proud of myself for not doing that again. And, like I said, I went through a whole training camp. I feel great where I'm at.
Yeah.
All right, so KP, before we went live, like you did mention, you think the 49ers are kind of loving it, all this talk about, just his injury, and they're maybe milking it a little bit, knowing that, going into this week one game against Seattle, from the opponent's standpoint, it's like, oh, crap, we got to prepare for now McCaffrey potentially not playing this game or maybe a different game plan from the 49ers. So you think this is kind of some gamemanship happening? I mean, even McCaffrey in this clip said, I'm not supposed to mention too much about what happened.
Yeah, he knew, right? Just Christian right here. Like he was always going to be bombarded by questions. As soon as it came out that, Christian McCaffrey is questionable yesterday, Kyle Shanahan at the podium was always going to be flooded with questions. And sure enough, you could just kind of see him like there was a little smirk, but he didn't want to give anything away. He was never going to give anything away. It was funny just seeing every different media member of the 49ers tweet out, Christian McCaffrey's back in practice, and then clarify it as it go along. Well, he's by himself. Well, he actually always does this. So just clarification after clarification. You cannot tell me that they don't love this. But I think in my mind, he was always going to play. And I think just listening to him talk there, that's him maturing, right? Him being aware, hey, maybe I pushed myself a little too hard last year early, and maybe that's why I had the setback. So now I'm going to catch that, and I'm going to be overly cautious. So I actually appreciate that. He's willing and he's mature enough to acknowledge that, hey, just chill, just relax, man.
The reason that people just aren't going to believe anything that this team says, even if what they say seems positive, like McCaffrey is saying like he feels great, he's good to go. No one's going to believe that because we heard the same things last year as well, and then he ended up missing the first 10 weeks of the season. Even we didn't even find out he wasn't going to play in that week 1 game till like the hour before. So I think for a lot of us, we're not going to let out a sigh of relief until we actually see Christian out on the field, get through a full game, and we might have to do it again the following week, right? It might be a week-to-week thing where we feel comfortable with where Christian is at. But like your general sense, like, are you worried about Christian at all? Do you think maybe his role for Sunday might be a little bit different?
I don't think any worried than we were before all this came, right? Like he's still he's almost a year removed now. So like he was always going to be the same player. Again, it's smart that he felt like a little tweak, a little, like, I don't want to say pop, but something happened where he's like, okay, I need to shut it down. But I really don't. Like he's going to be the focal point of the 49ers offense. If he's active, just as we saw from weeks 10 through 13, he's going to get the ball and going to get the ball a lot. So I think if he's on the field, there's going to be all systems go for McCaffrey.
Yeah, and maybe we see a little bit more of the RB2 than we've seen in years past. Like Brian Robinson, I think there's a reason that they traded for him besides maybe just some of the injuries that they had during training camp. I think they really do like his game, really see him as a strong RB2. And I think he's probably going to get a decent amount of snaps this season, including in week 1, especially after probably what went down this week. Tell me a little bit more about just like Brian Robinson and how he would fit into this offense.
I thought it was interesting that Shanahan was like, sure, this is technically his first full week of practice, but you know the game plan and you don't have to know the entire playbook to know the game plan. He's a running back. He's done this all of his life. Robinson said that himself. To me, he fits better in this scheme because he's better running outside the numbers. He's a guy who bounces off tackles. He's a guy who takes advantage of the creases that an offensive line creates for him. And I watched all of his touches last year. He actually does a really good job of the things that some of the 49ers backs did not do last year. We're just taking the yards available to him. Don't bounce it when you don't have to. Go north and south. And he actually is faster than I think people would understand. And he's a big back, so your instant reaction is, oh, he's a power back. But I really didn't get that sense from him. Like, sure, he's strong and like 225 pounds, but he can run a little bit. So I think he's going to give the 49ers a nice change of pace where if Christian is going to be this every down back, Robinson can come in and maybe wear on teams late in the fourth quarter. So I think he can give them a really good change of pace. I think he's a massive upgrade from what they would have as opposed to Garindo and James. I know we haven't seen James, but he's a rookie, so expectations can't be high for him. And there's no guarantee that Garindo can or will stay healthy. So just the fact that you have a reliable, dependable back behind Christian McCaffrey should do wonders for the 49ers offense.
I think they'll use him in the red zone quite a bit because that was one of his strong points with Washington. And that was one of the low points for the 49ers last year. So it can't hurt to have a guy like B-Rob in the mix. But you mentioned Jordan James. He's dealing with that finger injury still, so he's doubtful. Rookie wide receiver Jordan Watkins with the ankle, also doubtful. And as mentioned, Christian McCaffrey with the calf, questionable, did not practice today. Not that he needs to practice every day, but yeah, we'll, as of right now, still expect him to be available for Sunday's game unless we hear otherwise. But all right, let's get into this week 1 matchup, and let's just assume that Christian McCaffrey plays, in all of this as we go through everything. And we'll go through the Seattle's game status for this as well. They're not missing anyone too important for them. Wide receiver Jake Bobo is going to be out. Linebacker Uchenna Nwosu is out. And wide receiver Derek Young also out. So besides that, they'll be pretty full strength as far as their starters go. Now, I did see a lot of people earlier this week talking about, the weather. It's Seattle. It could potentially rain. Well, as it stands right now, and this is from AccuWeather, I grabbed this earlier, this screenshot, 23% probability of rain for Sunday's game. This is afternoon, so I think it might rain a little bit in the morning, but by game time, it should be dry, so shouldn't be a worry. Although the 49ers do tend to get lucky for some reason, it rains in their week 1 games, but hopefully they can escape it this time around. But KP, let's talk about the big changes in Seattle because, they had a new head coach last year. And so when a head coach is new for the first couple seasons, you do kind of see the new coach slowly bring in new changes to the team. It doesn't always happen in that very first year. So one big change was quarterback, right? They did away with Geno Smith, now brought in Sam Darnold, and then wide receiver group looks pretty different as well. Traded away DK Metcalf to the Steelers. Tyler Lockett's out of the picture. They signed Cooper Kupp. We'll see if that works out for them. New faces on defense, defensive end Marques Lawrence, and they drafted a notable rookie safety, Nick Emanwari. And a lot of coaching changes, some slight coaching changes, mostly on the offensive side, including the new offensive coordinator, familiar face for the 49ers, Clint Kubiak. So with some of these changes, like what sticks out to you about what maybe what they're trying to go for with some of these changes?
I think Geno was a pure drop back passer, like 7-on-7 video game type quarterback where we're going to throw the ball every play. That's not Darnold's game. Darnold's more of a play action under center, hit the big play off the running game. So instantly when I saw Geno to Darnold, I'm thinking, oh, they are going to run the ball. And sure enough, like you saw in the preseason, their numbers were just like the splits were insane. I think they threw the ball or they ran the ball like 35, 40 more times than they threw it. The change in wide receiver, DK Metcalf, I don't know how good he actually was. Cooper Kupp, who knows? He's a little long in the tooth. I do think Tyler Lockett is good. I mean, it was going to be JSN's team no matter what this year. So I guess they're really just swapping out Metcalf for Kupp or Lockett for Kupp. Regardless, I think the 49ers match up well there. As far as Lawrence goes, like he's going to be a big boost just because they don't really have a true pass rusher. They have a bunch of big bodies up front to stop the run, but nobody to really rush the passer like Lawrence. I think Mike MacDonald really put his fingerprints on the defense in the middle of the season. They booted a couple linebackers in favor of Ernest Jones, I think they got from the Titans, and then Tyrese Knight, who actually reminds me a lot of Dre Greenlaw. So they got better, much better at the linebacker front. So, and then honestly, if you just look at their numbers down the stretch, Seattle was very good on defense. So I think just a defensive coordinator putting his fingerprints on the roster and Sam Darnold, they're going to run the ball a ton. So it's going to look, I don't want to say like pre-Lamar Ravens, but they're going to run the ball a ton. They're going to play good defense. I think they're going to shorten the game. Ideally, what I'm imagining is we're not going to see 3.5 hour games for Seattle. I think these games are going to fly by just based on their style of play.
All right. Yeah. And you mentioned the defense. I think, with Mike MacDonald and him having been the defensive coordinator of the Ravens, a really great Ravens personnel that he had over there, all those great players. I knew it was going to take some time for him to kind of build something similar in Seattle, right? Like you have to draft new guys, kind of handpick guys that you want. So now in his second year, he's maybe a little bit closer to that, but it still feels like maybe there's some ways to go to get to that point. But even still, I mean, they already had some good players, even on the defense as well, like Devin Witherspoon, Tariq Woolen, right? Julian Love. So now with the guys that they've added, DeMarcus Lawrence, and I already think Jaron Reed and Leonard Williams are really two good guys up front. And then you mentioned Tyrese Knight. Actually, I thought it was interesting. One of the coaches mentioned that Tyrese Knight might be on a pitch count for this first game because he's missed some time leading up to it. But I guess we'll see. As of right now, like he wasn't on the injury report for them. So TBD on that. But yeah, as far as just how close this team will look to maybe like the Ravens, I don't think it'll be quite there yet, but what about you? Like, do you think it'll take some time? I think in week 1, it's like they're going to try to do some things. I think by week 18, the second matchup against Seattle, it'll be a different story. It'll look much much more refined, I think.
So I think Seattle's going to be a good matchup for a lot of teams, but I'm not sure that they're a good matchup for the 49ers. So in my mind, the 49ers, like their offensive line is most susceptible when they feature speed or when they face speed, like Colton McKivitz, speed, athleticism, Jake Brindle, speed, athleticism. But all these guys are kind of like just big, I'm going to run through you, bull rush, brute strength kind of guys. And last year, like Byron Murphy, first round pick, if you watch him go against Dominic Puni, you would have thought that Puni was the first round pick. Like he I don't want to say he manhandled him, but he really had no issues. And Murphy was very good last year. So I think that was something that even caught me by surprise because I thought Murphy would be a good player. So to see Puni like hold his own against that was pretty impressive. Obviously, Trent Williams back in the fold. I don't care who he goes against, DeMarcus Lawrence, Boye Mafe, Michael Bennett from back in whoever it is, he's always going to have the upper hand.
Right.
It's weird that when people talk about the 49ers and the 49ers offense, they don't mention them getting back their best player, and that's Trent Williams. So yes, he only played around like 60% of the snaps last year, but he still played at like an all-pro level. Like he was still one of the very best players at his position. He had better numbers than the guys who actually made the all-pro team. So I think they're going to be able to actually run the ball again, which they could not do to the left side. I saw a stat, Next Gen Stats said the 49ers averaged a full yard per carry more when Trent Williams was on the field running to the left. So again, like what are they all? The first play of the game is always the same for the 49ers. Why? Because you know what's coming and you still can't stop it. Like that's such a testament to me. So I think that's going to be a really big deal for the 49ers to just open up the offense and also keep Brock Purdy comfortable. So I think Seattle will eventually have a good defense and a good defensive line, but just trying to overpower the 49ers is not really how you get over on them up front. So I think they should be able to not control the line of scrimmage, but at least win the stalemate or live in the stalemate life.
Well, as far as like a matchup, I think to pay attention to, it's going to be this chess match against Mike MacDonald and Shanahan. And so some things I'm looking out for from this Seattle defense, the disguises, right? They do a lot of disguising. Versus post-snap looks could look very different. So that's going to require a lot of processing from Brock Purdy and quickly, right? And also sometimes you get the timely blitzes from MacDonald, simulated pressures, overloads on third downs, and against runs. And this is something we saw quite a bit when they went against the 49ers last year, loading the box, 6-man fronts, to try to neutralize the 49ers wide zone runs. And yeah, you could expect they're going to try to put some pressure on Brock Purdy, just like they did or just like he did with the Ravens in that Christmas game some years ago, right? It just kind of put them in a bit of a predicament. But again, I don't think it'll look quite the same, but just something to look out for. I think these are some of the things that they're going to try to run and see if they have some success with it against the 49ers, see how Brock Purdy reacts.
So in week 6, in the first matchup last year, when they had Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle on the field, MacDonald was pretty much terrified to go man coverage. Like, obviously, you're not going to be able to win those matchups when those two are on the field. So Brock Purdy kind of picked him apart in zone coverage. All his completions and all his yardage came against zone coverage. But I guess, ironically enough, he didn't complete any of his passes when they ran man. So in the next matchup without Ayuk, without Kittle, he relied more on man coverage. And sure enough, Brock Purdy completed most of his passes against man coverage, including all of his passes on third down against man. So I'm going to be interested to see like how aggressive he is. So with the wide receivers, right? It's going to be Ricky Pearsall. It's going to be Juwan Jennings, and it's going to be question mark. Like, I don't know who else is going to be out there. Like, I imagine it's going to be more musical chairs. But if Kittle and McCaffrey are playing, not Kittle, if McCaffrey is playing like we think he will, I think that's going to be where the 49ers really have a matchup advantage, because like if it's Ernest Jones, if it's Tyree Snyder, if it's one of the safeties walking down, that's just not a matchup that anybody has been able to win over. So I think we're going to see a lot of McCaffrey and a lot of Kittle in the passing game.
Yeah, and I think if McCaffrey's available, we figure he'll have better success. But I do think, Ricky Pearsall has the opportunity to be the X factor in this game, just something that opposing defenses haven't seen enough of yet to really know what it's going to look like this time around. So I think people are going to be focusing on McCaffrey, of course, which is easier said than done. McCaffrey still gets, he gets his fair share of targets and opportunities, even with all the focus around him. But we know that focus opens things up for other guys as well. I also think another guy that's going to get a lot of attention is going to be George Kittle, because he does tend to have some pretty good games against Seattle. And I think just knowing the 49ers wide receiver situation, I think everyone thinks, Brock Purdy's going to be looking for George Kittle. But I do think that's where Ricky Pearsall kind of comes in, this kind of better connection that I've seen between him and Brock Purdy has a chance to kind of flourish in this week 1 game right off the bat, just like it did in that preseason game against the Raiders where he caught those 3 passes on a single drive. So he's the X factor for me in this one.
I wonder if they play the matchup game, because they have a 6'4" corner. The 49ers have a giant receiver, Juwan Jennings. So I wonder if it's Woolen and he follows Juwan Jennings, and if it's Devon Witherspoon and he follows Ricky Pearsall, because yes, Pearsall was a first-round pick, but Spoon was like 5th overall, and he's very, very good. So you mentioned there's going to be a lot of attention on Kittle and a lot of attention on McCaffrey. So I wonder if they just rely on their corners winning on the outside and like just funnel everybody else toward the inside. So that's where the chess matchup relies on me, which again, when we talk about Shanahan, we talk about all the pre-snap motion, all the window dressing, he wants you to look over here when really something's happening over here. I would imagine creating mismatches for McCaffrey and for Kittle will be like the one way the 49ers are able to get ahead here, because I think there's no doubt that Pearsall is going to take a step forward and going to have a big season, but this is a tough matchup for him out of the gate.
Yeah, I think so, especially like if he's going to be facing, man coverage in this one. Definitely. I think what he's best at is finding the soft spots in the zone. So yeah, well, I guess we'll see, but my X factor dark horse, I guess, for this one that people wouldn't really expect to have maybe a huge role right out of the gate. Let's look at the Seahawks offense. We already talked about Sam Darnold being the new face at quarterback there. Kenneth Walker, who's been there a few years now. But we talked about the run game. We do think, they're going to want to pound the ball. They also have Zach Charbonnet as the RB2. A lot of new faces on this offensive line, headlined by Gray Zabel, the rookie, who I was a fan of in the pre-draft process. Little bummed that he went to Seattle. But a couple of mainstays here as well, Charles Cross and Abe Lucas. We mentioned Cooper Kupp, the addition here. And after they traded, who was it? Noah Fant, right? They traded away Noah Fant. AJ Barner becomes the focal point of their tight end position. So he's the TE1 now. They
drafted a second rounder too, Arroyo, I believe.
Oh, that's right. Elijah Arroyo. So yeah, we'll see if he gets mixed in at all. But as you mentioned, Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to be the focal point from the wide receivers standpoint. So that brings us to the next discussion point here, which, I think could be a tricky matchup for the 49ers, or just a test, right? Like the Seahawks, we know, are going to want to run the football. And this is a big change from where they were last year, right? And I did get some of these stats, KP, from your preview article on Niners Nation. So thank you for that. You did point out, Seattle's pass play rate, 62.8%. That was 4th most. And Geno Smith lined up in the shotgun over 76% of the time, just not doing him any favors at all. I'm not sure what the plan was there, but obviously it didn't always work out for them. Kind of just played into defenses and gave defenses the advantage. And this time, I think they're going to be switching some things around. And you did kind of talk about in the preseason. That's what you said.
It's true. It's just still looking at it. It's just like, what?
So again, I got these
quarterback.
I got these from your piece on Niners Nation, in which you're talking about how much they ran the football in the preseason. So in week 1, 32 attempts, 170 rush yards. Week 2, 48 attempts, 268 rush yards. And yeah, week 3, they toned it down a little. They said, all right, we've shown enough. 24 attempts, 130 yards. But I think this really shows, even just in the preseason, right, what direction they want to take their offense in. And I think you're right. Sam Darnold, needs complementary football in order to be an efficient quarterback. And I think that's where they're going. Clint Kubiak obviously has been known to feature the run game a lot too. Another thing I know you mentioned in that piece, the Saints used 2 or more players in the backfield on a league high 23.8% of snaps when he was their offensive coordinator. So again, we could kind of expect a similar kind of look for the Seahawks this time around.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting just because we haven't talked about their fullback. Their fullback is a mammoth of a man. Their fullback is like 275 pounds, which, come on, it's just basically like having an extra offensive lineman in the backfield. So imagine Fred Warner and D Winters all week, right, going up against whoever, like playing scout team fullback, but he's not going to be over 240 pounds more than likely. So I don't know how you scout for that. But in the same breath, I don't know that the Seahawks running backs are all that good. I know they were both drafted in the second round, speaking of Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet, but I don't know that they're disciplined enough. And I think that plays right into the hands of like speedy guys like Warner and Winters. So if the 49ers can, like, they're going to be better just by addition, by subtraction. And that's no shade to Malik. Like, Malik Collins was never a full-time player, right? He's just a nickel player. The 49ers relied on him to be a full-time player because of injuries. Javon Hargrave was always a pass rush first player. They paid him to be a full-time defensive tackle, and that's just not who he was. So it's no surprise that players like those two, Leonard Floyd, another pass rush specialist, weren't good against the run. So the 49ers, what do? They redline those guys and go in with like the rookies. And now we're going to see Michael Williams, who I think is going to be a massive upgrade against the run. CJ West was practicing, so I think he's going to get some love. He's going to get a lot of snaps. What's going on with Alfred Collins? I know that he was out for much of the offseason, so he's behind the 8 ball. And I think he did show some promise as far as taking leaps the more he played in the preseason.
Yeah.
But he's a top 50 pick. And when the top 50 pick is not starting over somebody named Jordan Elliott, who we know, but if he's not starting over a veteran journeyman like that, should we look at that as a red flag?
Well, let me ask you a question. Do you think CJ West is starting at all? Or Michael Williams, like on these base downs?
Sure. No, that's fair. And okay, let's be clear here that just because you start doesn't mean you're going to play in the fourth quarter, right? So if Jordan Elliott's the first person on the field, that doesn't mean he's going to play when the game's on the line. So they're going to get a feel for what West can do, and may the best man win, right? And obviously by week 6, by week 12, they're hoping that Collins and West, probably more Collins because he is the better, higher investment, takes over. But I honestly don't know what's going to happen. I know West was getting in before Collins in August. So that makes me think that West is going to see the field. But at the same time, they're both more predominant run stoppers anyway. But it's the change in both teams, I think, in the trenches. They're just so much bigger than they were last year. I think the Seahawks are a lot more athletic on the offensive line. And I think the 49ers just way more stout against the run. They got pushed around so much last year, and it led to like a lot of missed tackles. I just don't think that's going to be the case this year. They just didn't have the kind of identity you would want from any defense, let alone like the defense that we're used to seeing under D'Amico Ryans and Robert Saleh. So I think just from an identity standpoint, they're going to be much better.
Yeah, and I think they're going to get back to rotating the hell out of this defensive line. So I do expect that while he won't be starting, Alfred Collins will probably get some snaps in the mix. I think the time that he did miss, in training camp and even OTAs, like that did put him behind the 8 ball. Like you even saw in like that first week when he did come back to training camp, it took him a few practices to even start making some nice plays. Like the first few, you were like, ooh, this doesn't look too great. But, I was giving him the benefit of the doubt, and just like after a while, it seemed like he was getting more comfortable. He was starting to win some reps in one-on-ones and team periods. So maybe he's just not quite there yet where everyone else is at this point in time. And so maybe they want to give him a little bit more time to get to that point before, throwing him out there as a starter, which, I kind of want to segue really quickly and ask you this, because on a similar note, the safety group, right? We know Pinnock's going to be one of those starters. And I think Marques Sigle, did enough and has showed enough promise to warrant being the second starter. But I have a feeling it's going to be Ji'Ayir Brown, not just because he was on the unofficial depth chart, but just hearing what Kyle Shanahan had to say about him too. He kind of just made it seem like what's held him back is injuries and things like that. So I think they might give him a go for week 1. So that's kind of like, it almost feels like the mindset is, we feel really good about these rookies, but we're not going to throw them out in the fire as starters right away.
I thought it was interesting that Kyle initially pointed to Ji'Ayir's rookie season because he was very good as a rookie. Like he came in after Lenoir tore his ACL, I think it was week 6 or whatever, and then just like instantly started making plays on the ball. And the 49ers hadn't had that, obviously, outside of Hufanga at the safety position. Then he had injuries, and then he had setbacks, and obviously last year was just like missed tackle. But I really don't think he was as bad in coverage as people think. And people are going to point to the play that he gave up in the preseason. That was Brock freaking Bowers, and he was right in position. So I think that he fits what Robert Saleh asked of his safeties quite well. I would start him, and I think he actually is a better fit for the role that he's playing. What I would do is I would start both of them. I wouldn't start Pinnock. I don't think Pinnock brings much to the table at all. Yeah. And if anything, what he did in the preseason was even more of a reason to not play him because he was the one missing tackles. He was the one blowing coverages. So maybe he's you're not going to throw out a 5th round pick and Ji'Ayir, like who's, was benched last year. So I guess I understand it from that standpoint. And maybe we're having a completely different discussion if Malik Mustafa was not hurt. But I think Malik is clears all of these players. But I would rather have Tig. And then how I would use Sigle is more of like a free safety who's able to come downhill. He actually was very good in the open field, but I don't know that he could cover. And when I say that, watching him at Kansas State, he just always seemed, I don't want to say like lost, but he just seemed unsure of himself in coverage. And that kind of showed up in the preseason too. But he's also a rookie, right? You have to understand like who we're talking about. Day 3 pick. Clearly his head is spinning. So if his head is spinning in the preseason, it's going to take him time. So it's going to take him reps. So I'm sure there's going to be a role for him. It's just about figuring out what that role will be. And again, like Saleh is very complex when it comes to like what he does defense. It's like night and day from Nick Sorensen on it. It's almost embarrassing like how different they are as play callers. So knowing that, like it's easy to understand why you're going to roll with Brown, who has played in the NFL for multiple years. He's played at the NFL speed. He's seen what offenses can do. And like I would roll with him. And I think it's also interesting that Pinnock and Sigle did not play much free safety in the preseason, whereas like Brown did. So like that kind of leads to, okay, it's pretty obvious that they like Brown in this role, and they're not as confident with the other two playing that deep role too. So
yeah, and so like I think kind of what you said about Sigle would apply to a lot of these rookies, right? Where let's just give them some time, a little bit more to get comfortable again before just throwing them out there, because you also kind of run the risk that if you throw them out there too early before they're really ready, I mean, it could impact their confidence, and then it could spiral. It could spiral quickly, especially with DBs. So I'm fine with it.
Think about what that says about us too, like the instant gratification. Like, why aren't these guys playing on the very first snap of the week 1? Like, come on, like they don't have to be ready right away. That's not what football's about. They have plenty of time to develop. They're going to get their chances, and they will play when they're ready.
Yeah, and I always think that like the defensive coordinators, I think, seem to have more willingness to play younger players like rookies than Kyle Shanahan does. So I have no doubt like we will see a lot of these guys. Also because they're needed, and on the defensive line, they're going to be rotated. So we'll see these guys. I have no worries about that. All right, let's get back into talking about just this final point that I want to talk about. Kenneth Walker here is, as far as yards after contact, he can get it. So I don't know if you guys can see this, a little small of a graphic, but on the left side, you have missed or broken tackles rate, and he's at 32%. And then as far as yards after contact per carry, he's at a little between 2.8 to 3.0, so 2.9, let's say. per carry, yards after contact. So this is one area, along with just run defense in general. We talked about tackles, right? And is this team going to be better at tackling? Is this team going to be better at defending the run? This week one game, I think, is a good test because, again, it's going to be a team that's committed to running the football. And, like you said, KP, like maybe it's not the biggest test. Like these Seahawks running backs maybe aren't the most talented. But just from a fundamental standpoint, I think we're going to learn a lot about this 49ers defense in this week one game.
Yeah, 100%. And honestly, you asked, like, are they going to be better tackling? It would be tough to be worse.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and that's why I point out to the size. That's why I keep talking about the size of the defensive line, just because when you have smaller players, they're inevitably going to fall off tackles. When you have players who aren't, I don't want to say like tough, but just don't have the same mindset. Like Winters is he's a wild child. He will just run full speed into anybody. And that's what he was doing last year, which is why I didn't understand why is this not playing, because that's what plays in the NFL, right? Recklessness plays at linebacker. So I think he's going to have a really breakout year. I don't anticipate him or Walker or Charbonnet getting over on a guy like Winters. So just how the 49ers play in general, how they're running to the ball, I think they're going to be so much better. I don't think we're going to see some crazy yards after contact. Last year in both meetings, they were 23 missed tackles against the Seahawks. So yes, they are going to improve.
Yikes. Yeah, it has to be better. I think it will be better. I think what we've seen so far from this defense indicates that it will be too. It's not just some like false hope that we're running off of right now. So I think the other thing that could be a positive matchup for the 49ers is, we talked about the new starters on Seattle's offensive line, and a lot of those being younger guys, right? So they're going to have to cut their teeth against Nick Bosa, Bryce Huff in this week one matchup. But I think that, ironically, it's the two familiar faces that have been on this Seattle team already that I think have the toughest matchup, and that's Abe Lucas and Charles Cross going up against Nick Bosa and Bryce Huff. I think those guys just present, big challenges for those guys. And, that could complicate Sam Darnold's life a little bit if and when he has to throw the football. I think Robert Saleh is going to try to confuse the hell out of Darnold. I think he's just prone to being confused out there. So like
with a confused look.
So, that could play to the 49ers advantage as well. And I think as far as the 49ers pass rush, I think it'll be better this year as well.
Yeah, they're going to be much better. I thought you can just tell in the preseason they were moving more. Bosa's not going to line up in the same spot as he did every freaking play last year, which again, like how in the world is a defensive player of the year just sitting there, right? Just in the same spot over the right tackle. Like it could not be any less creative than that. So you saw in the preseason Bryce Huff going inside of the tackle. You're going to see, I imagine Michael Williams are going to run a bunch of games. So they're going to free up Bosa and create matchups for him as opposed to saying, hey, you're good, go beat him. No, they're going to give him an opportunity. And just the blitzing off the edge from Chase Lucas, I think that is obviously Upton Stout is going to be the guy. So if they're using Lucas that way, I think it speaks volumes to how we're going to see guys like Stout and probably even Lenoir, who's going to play on the outside. So I think they're going to have Darnold in a headlock, honestly, which is why Seattle's going to try to run the ball and do everything in their power to protect him. Because if you get Darnold in 3rd and 8 consistently against a Robert Saleh defense, who I know the Jets have like a negative connotation about them, but they were still always a dominant defense when he was their coach. So just as a play caller, he has always been one of the best. And I think if they can stop the run, if they can do what they sought out to do this offseason, right, by making all these personnel changes, they're going to have an opportunity to really come up with some plays. Whether it's blitzing Warner, whether it's one of the safeties, one of the cornerbacks making plays, and we haven't talked about Renardo Green taking the next step too. We saw the Jets corners like former Niner DJ Reed having career years under Saleh. So I think it's easy to assume that Renardo Green's going to have the same kind of similar career arc where he just shoots up like crazy under Saleh.
You posted the screenshot from the week 1 preseason game, 3rd and 6, and Robert Saleh has all 11 defenders within 7 yards of the line of scrimmage. I mean, these are just the kind of things that you're going to see from Robert Saleh, especially on 3rd down, 3rd and long, where it favors the defense. He can get really creative and really confusing for opposing offenses, opposing quarterbacks. So, yeah, I think we definitely see some of this for Sam Darnold in week 1, and it should be exciting. I think he was giving us a lot of glimpses of a lot of creativity, exotic looks, even in camp in the preseason. He's just gonna unleash it even more once the regular season comes. We'll be praying for Darnold. But okay, you mentioned the corners, right? I do like Lenoir in this game, but mostly for the entertainment value. Sure. Lenoir just always loves to play against the Seahawks. I think he hates them as much as we do.
He's a chirper.
He's a chirper. He was talking about, he was mad DK left and talking about Smith and Chigba always crying. So I think we see a turned up Lenoir in this game. And hopefully it looks better than it did last year. Last year I think was mostly the product of the defense as a whole, Nick Sorensen as a whole. I think it's what the 49ers are going to be doing defensively helps Lenoir out a lot more.
Oh, 100%. This is not an easy matchup. JSN is very, very good. So I'm interested how they guard him. Are they going to use Cup primarily in the slot? Because I feel like if you don't, you're kind of wasting him. He's not going to run by anybody. So JSN hasn't really played on the outside exclusively as a pro. He didn't really do that in college either. So I think how they use him is going to be very interesting. But at the same time, this is Lenoir's first time, assuming that Stout is a nickel, playing on the outside too. So there's a lot of ways, a lot of newness going on for a lot of sides here. I do like JSN a lot. I'm interested to see how Lenoir fares on the outside consistently this year, but he understands the game, right? He's never been a burner, but he knows routes. He understands how to play. He studies guys. It's clear that he knows the game. So, I mean, it's tough to think Lenoir even if he doesn't get any better based on his contract extension, he's still one of the 15, 20 best cornerbacks in the league. So even if he plateaus, I think that it's going to be fine for the 49ers.
Yeah, and you also mentioned Renardo Green. We could see a second-year leap out of him as well with just the help of, what this defense is expected to look like this year schematically and Robert Saleh helping him out. I think it can go a long way. I think the secondary group kind of grew up on us real fast. We were very worried about it, I think, early in the offseason. And then suddenly, it kind of looked like one of the strong points. By the end of camp. So excited about the group. Excited about Upton Stout as well. Should be a good game. But yeah, I think Smith and Jigba presents the biggest challenge for the 49ers, I think, on Sunday. I'm not too worried about Cooper Kupp at his big age. Torrey Horton, I guess we'll see what he brings into the mix. But yeah, Smith and Jigba is going to be the big one to stop.
And if they're confident that Stout can cover Kupp, then you can leave Renardo Green on an island, right? Because Saleh knows, and he did this with the Jets. He just have the entire field to sauce, and then he could shift help. If they feel like Lenoir's struggling to run with JSN, or you just want to put extra set of eyes on him, you can shift coverage toward their best player. So there are plenty of ways, if the 49ers are truly confident in their other two corners, to take away JSN. So they have multiple outs. And obviously we talk about the tight ends. Arroyo's a rookie, but Winters is superb coverage guy. And obviously we all know what Warner can do in coverage. So coverage-wise, outside of JSN, there aren't really many advantages for Seattle, which if there's only one to take away, that makes everybody else's job easier.
I want to ask you this about Lenoir. Do you think that this season we see him stay on the outside a little bit more and we see Upton Stout just primarily as the nickel guy?
Yeah, I think it's based on his contract. He was always going to play on the outside. I wonder if they wanted one of the veterans they signed to kind of take that outside job, but I think Stout kind of took it himself, right? So Stout played himself onto the field, and now Lenoir is going to kind of have to learn on the fly. But again, like you can run enough coverages, like if they're feeling like Lenoir is getting beat, you can do plenty of different things. But I think he's going to live on the outside, and like he has enough reps on the outside against quality competition too, where they can, I don't want to say get by because it seems like I'm talking down on Lenoir, but I think he'll hold up. I think he'll be fine on the outside. Let me put it like this. Like, I'm not worried about Lenoir this season.
Yeah. I think that's totally fair. And again, we're excited about Upton Stout and what he's going to bring at that slot spot. I think he's run support, especially, he's going to be great. I already know that. All right, guys, if you guys want to check out KP's preview article, go to Niners Nation, and he goes pretty in depth in this matchup as well. Talked about some of the discussion points we talked about here today too. So make sure you guys check that out. Appreciate all of you. But KP, before we get out of here, gotta give me the score prediction. I'm gonna give mine first. Earlier this week I said 23-19. But what are you kind of thinking?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be nasty. I think it's gonna be I think we're talking teens. I think it's closer to what we saw in week 11, where maybe first 1 to 20 wins. So let me go. I'll go 21-13, like something like that, where maybe Seattle's able to hit a big one, but I think they're really going to struggle to like consistently manufacture drives. And that's not to say like the 49ers are going to be this dominant defense all year, but when you give a guy like Saleh basically a half a year to game plan, I think we're going to see him flex his muscles against Seattle. So I think it's going to be a very defensive dominant game. And the 49ers are just going to kind of dink and dunk their way down the field. I think we're going to see Shanahan's scheme shine. We're going to see Brock play within himself. And he's going to rely on his best players, which that tends to work out well for you.
Well, they had no problem like really moving the ball last year, even with all the injuries. They just had a problem punching it into the end zone. So hopefully that's not an issue for them this year. But guys, thank you so much for tuning in to the first preview show of the season. Can't wait for next week, because then we'll really have a little bit more to go off of. It should be way better. But appreciate all of you. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Hit that notification bell so you know when I go live. Audio listeners, leave a rating, leave a review. But for now, folks, have a good rest of your Friday. Have a great weekend. Talk to you Sunday for the post-game show. But for now, peace.